I can dig up. Let's see. Let's go to random. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
talk
Justin
about
had some
219.
good phrasing. I
Yeah.
like that. One of the things he wrote is the AAR, what is that actually, the full name here? The Association of American Railroads had a
Yeah.
comment where they observed that their PTC, positive train control deployments are, and I quote, primarily located within railroad rights of way and generally away from households. And that was an argument for why interference is unlikely. So he points out this necessarily limits the potential for harmful interference, given we do not advocate for mobile use of 219 by amateur stations. So good. So good.
Yes. And then let's see. Beyond it says beyond documented amateur radio service history and coexisting with primary users, we believe our proposed retention of many of the restrictions, like secondary status, reduced power levels, fixed stations, digital emissions will sufficiently reduce the possibility of harmful interference. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this looked really good. And I don't see any obvious improvements. Um,
Yeah, I think it's sufficient. It covers everything that's necessary, and it's clean and straightforward. And
I agree.
I wish I'd had more time to help draft it, but Justin did a fantastic job. So
Yeah, and the fact that it's so short is actually very helpful. So, we've tried to kind of be have high Q or high selectivity on the comments and the reply comments, and I think this will work great. So, I I'm willing to just take this as written and then go ahead and reply. The only other thing that we could reply to is the next nav popped up again and proposed to upend the 900 megahertz band to take it over for their product. And I think that we could probably go back to our original reply comment and then say the exact same thing that we did before. So I could take that as an action item to go back to our original reply to NextNav for the proposed rulemaking. So the FCC put out a notice of proposed rulemaking specifically for the NextNav proposal. And honestly, this proposal has gotten a lot of traction from a lot of different places. There was a presenter to the FCC TAC about GPS and position, navigation, location, timing, all of those different services. And he seemed to be very taken with this proposal. And when so I spoke up and I said, this proposal isn't about prototype or a product. There's no product in and if you read the notice of proposed rulemaking, the NextNav says that they don't have a market. It's not, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist unless the FCC tears up the entire 900 megahertz band. The presenter didn't seem to be fully aware of this and said, well, it's the idea. It was the idea that was good. Maybe not this particular proposal. And so I took a lot out. I took a lot from that, when that happened. And that just increased my confidence that kind of preserving the situation that we have on 900 megahertz is a good idea, and that like a corporate takeover for a product that doesn't exist and isn't that great in the first place and totally depends on cellular companies incorporating it and footing the bill. From what I know about cellular companies, they're not going to really do that. So there's plenty to be said there. We'll probably go back to our original work on that and then see if it's still relevant to the comments. So that's the only other thing I can think of in terms of regulatory that we might want to do, at least out of this particular proceeding. Did anybody read I've not yet read the ARL's comments. Someone has because 219 was not mentioned in that proceeding, which doesn't really surprise me. It's not a huge priority for ARL, but I was just curious if there was anything else that we might want to pay attention to or
I pulled it up just now. They want to delete the LF and VHF UHF baud rate and bandwidth limitations.
okay, so they're
They want
repeating
to,
the
yep.
Okay, good. That's the highest priority to me.
Yep. And that's very top of the list. So I think they're in alignment there. Update and modernize technician class license privileges. They want to offer HF data and phone communications to techs
Okay.
to incentivize. And so you'd get like some small portion of the band, presumably. I'm
Okay.
not reading the full thing. I'm reading their summary.
Yeah. That's also a reiteration of a previous proposal. So that's good. That's reinforcing something that's already been brought up.
That's new to me. I think that's a great idea, though. Modernize 80-meter subband divisions. I don't really know anything about that. Delete and replace obsolete digital code limitations.
Yes, that's good.
Um, I guess I'd have to go read for details on that. Implement changes to third-party rules adopted internationally at WRC 03. Remove the treaty requirement for third-party messages. Delete amplifier drive limitation. Okay.
All right.
Remove non-current personal information in amateur ULS records. Yeah, okay. Because like that's the big thing, right? And I know personally that there's a lot of people, especially in New Hampshire, where I am, where people don't want to get a ham radio license because they don't want their home address posted.
Yeah.
And so you can go get a PO box, but you have to have done that from the very beginning.
Right.
That's a great idea. I like that one.
I'm
Identify.
surprised to see that actually, because in the past, ARL has been very resistant, and a lot
Hmm.
of board members in the past have been very resistant to this. What they what they say is that, oh, well, we're self-policing. So if you don't know the home address of the person that has the license, that you can't, police the bands. And I never found that to be very compelling. And
I
actually,
agree.
having been a victim of somebody looking up my amateur radio call at a long ago DEF CON speaking engagement and then driving across the country to show up in my driveway and then making a mess of things for nearly a week. I've been very much in favor of, like, maybe we don't have personal, we don't have my home address required as part of it. And yes, there's always been this, well, just use a PO box, but that costs money and you do have to do it from the beginning. So this hits very close to home for me. I'm very glad to see that in there.
Yeah, I think that can only be upside.
Yeah. And there's easy solutions to following up on, like, interference complaints. If you if the person happens to be identifiable, like they happen to say their call sign, I don't know. We've had lots of jammers here in San Diego that never say a call sign. You have no idea who they are and you have to DF them. Well, you DF them to their location, then you pass that information along. About what you can do. So there's other ways to handle interference.
Especially DFing now has become so easy and relatively cheap. I mean, phased array with the Kraken SDR. Someone locally had that because there was one younger ham that was being abused verbally on a repeater, and they had tracked him down to a place in Lowell, like 30 miles away, 40 miles away from the repeater. He was on top of a parking garage, and so they were trying to figure out exactly who it was based on that.
Wow.
But like that's some progress to be able to
It
just go
is.
click
No,
click,
I'm
drive around,
surprised.
find it.
Yeah, the technical progress is there. And yeah, the progress from Ariel actually putting this into a proposal is, I think
Oh
that's
yeah.
good news. See anything else
Delete obsolete identification requirement for special call signs. Uh,
for a
Special event call signs are
special event?
currently required to identify with the FCC responsible call sign at least once each hour, and they want to get rid of that because it's
Oh,
confusing.
okay.
They want to rely on the database that clearly identifies the special event call sign. That seems reasonable. Delete obsolete paper license replacement provision because they don't send paper copies anyway. So there's no need for any of the paperwork.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, and that is the end of the summary. I'm sure there's a lot more details. And
Yeah.
Well, unless they're keeping score based on how many rules they actually strike down, this stuff's all going to disappear into the noise because it's not going to save any FCC resources, which is what they care about.
They do care about old crap, like cruft, or at least there are some people that care at the FCC about old, crappy, crufty, outdated rules. Like I think Mike and Jason also brought up that somebody had requested, like, maybe we should get rid of the Arecibo repeater requirements. Like that seems to be kind of like really outdated. Like we can go ahead and just strike those. So things like that, people at the FCC actually do like. They like to see that so they can clear it out. If you believe the priority list at the FCC, like what they want to move towards is like dynamic spectrum allocation and sharing, like intelligent sharing or adaptive sort of spectrum management. And sharing means that a lot of the stuff is in the way. And they say the words are that they don't want to put technology into the rules anymore. They used to do this a lot. We Amateur radio has suffered from this in the past, where you have a technology solution that's now in the regulations forever. And when things change, as they do very quickly, this is an impediment to innovation. It doesn't help innovation. And like the word's very clear that they need to not be in the way of innovation. So, you know, I think our particular area of interest being the amateur radio service, we see a lot of the leftovers of previous ways of doing things, meaning technology solutions buried in there, notification requirements that don't make sense, symbol rate limits. Why this would never fly today. They just don't do that anymore. But, you go, oh, by the way, you need to fix this old thing. That always ends up being a lower priority. So, if we can help get this cleared out in any way, then good. And seeing this stuff coming from ARL is a really, really good, that's really good news to me. So I think maybe like's been said on our Slack, we probably want to chime in and make a reply and at least add to, these are really good ideas too, and we really support them, and here's why. I think that can only help. If it doesn't happen this time around, then all of this stuff is going to stay in the record, we hope. And someone in the future will pick up on the momentum. So we can only kind of add a positive vector. It may not get paid attention to in the very near future, but it being in the record and having a more kind of modern, clear writing about it can only help. So yeah, so we got a lot of writing to do. We've done some already. That I think the draft that we see on Slack is excellent. So I'll go ahead and make that happen.
Okay.
So if anybody sees anything else that we might want to chime in on, anybody that said, oh, by the way, we should delete the entire amateur radio service, we probably should weigh in on that. That's a bad idea, but I didn't see anything or hear anything about that. But keep your eyes open. If there's anything else we need to reply to, we can. We've got the time and resources to do it.
I haven't looked exhaustively, but just spot checking once in a while. I saw a lot of hams writing impassioned pleas for don't touch ham radio.
Oh, good.
So
wow.
So it's good. I mean, that kind of mobilization, very important.
Yeah, no, it helps. I think that, yeah, that's good stuff. Cool. All right. Anything else, Mike, that you can think of?
I think that's it. I've got the side project doing LTE stuff, so I'm not sure if I've talked about that with the
no,
ORI context, but
yeah, I don't think you've talked about it at the meeting. But would you like to introduce your because you have a Discord and you have a project, and go please have the floor
briefly
to introduce it.
It's so the core idea is that LTE has predefined bands. So if your modem for your phone says it supports band 40 or band 8 or band 30, any of these different numbers, then the base station supports that band, they will more or less magically talk to each other. And there's a lot of work, many hundreds of thousands into the millions of dollars being spent just on the regulatory work of maybe not regulatory work. What am I trying to say? The standardization work of making sure that everyone's on the same page. And by luck, by chance, band 40 has overlap with the amateur radio band privileges here in ITU Region 2. There's also band 30. We can't use that here because we used to have 2300 to 2400. Band 30 was an FDD. So there's uplink on one set of frequencies, downlink on another. We could have used that back when we had the full 2300, 2400, but we don't. So Europeans are good. They can use band 30. Band 40 has overlap with 2300 to 2310 megahertz and 2390 to 2400. So we have two 10 megahertz areas we can use for LTE that existing commercial off-the-shelf phones, modems, and base stations already support. The trick is band 40 is not used out here. You can't use it. So you try and find hardware that can, or use an SDR. SDR would work really well, except that there are no currently working that I could find that work with my hardware software-defined radio implementations that support the eNode B, the base station mode on band 40, because band 40 is time domain. So it's single channel and it takes churns. Excuse that door, the wind blew my door open. TDD, so it has one carrier and then transmitters and receivers take turns. So it's not full duplex. That's great for us. No expensive duplexers, nothing like that. But the software is, of course, very time insensitive. So thanks to a Chinese ham, I want to say it's BA7JKX. He runs band40.com. I apologize if I got his call sign wrong. But band40.com, he sells tiny little 50 milliwatt femtocells that are perfectly working band 40 LTE TDD base stations that work with already open source EPCs, which is the core network software. So you have your phone, that's called UE, user equipment. You have eNode B, which is the base station, the cell tower, the radio part. And then you have the back end, which is EPC. And if you're doing 5G, all those names change. It's like 5G core instead of EPC. Funny stuff. The acronyms are crazy. And from the outside, because I'm brand new to this, it was like last month, 2 months ago, I didn't know any of this. You're like, wow, why are these people not just like talking clearly? And then you learn the acronyms and you realize like, oh, they are. You have to have the acronyms because of how complicated it is. So that's the fun part of the learning curve. So where are we now? Because of this hardware, we have working SIM cards. We have working phone calls, text messages. So there's the EPC, and that's the evolved packet core. That's the trick with LTE and voice over LTE is it's not carrier switched. It's all packet switched. So it's like it's a regular IP network. Voice over IP is how phone calls are made. That works well. That's voice over LTE. So that's great. And there's more tools so you can get voice over Wi-Fi working because there's a huge group. Osmocom is very, very famous for this. Open5GS is the packet core and IMS. And where I'm looking now is try and understand mission critical push to talk, which is a set of standards for doing radio, the kind of thing that you would see for first responders. That's why it's called mission critical. But if you could have MCPTT and what they call MBMS, which is multicast LTE, you would have some really good tools for ham radio purposes. So I do have a domain actually. I forgot.
Okay.
xcl.is. That's X-ray Charlie Lima India Sierra. Nice and short.
Very good.
And that has links to everything.
Yeah. And you do have an active Discord that supports the investigations and experiments and hardware and software for the project. So
yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We have some fantastic tools being written and people that are just having a lot of fun working together. Like troubleshooting is like, what does that mean? It's like, I don't know, but we're going to go figure it out. And then you do, and then you get to share it with everyone. And that has been very enjoyable.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, lots of good stuff.
NB0X has sent a message in the chat saying this SDR system might be applicable to an LTE effort, and it's pi-rad.io, pi-rad.io.
Yeah, it's from New York University, and it's more for experimenting with advanced mobile structures, maybe like 6G, 5G, and 6G, but it might be applicable. They have hardware and software for this. I don't know if they have LTE specific, but it's intended for mobile network development.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. And anything else?
I think that's it. That's I was all in on LTE, and now I'm all in on the day job. So
understand. Yeah,
very focused.
Congratulations again. It's a good news.
Thank you. I'm very happy to have it.
Cool. All right. Hey, Matthew, welcome. And you have the floor. Tell us anything you got. And
Sure. So I don't have I've been kind of off for the last couple of weeks. So I'm hoping to get back into the swing of things this coming week. So just be mainly trying to get caught up with some of the MSK modem tasks, which there's a few that are kind of lingering. And I don't have them off the top of my head, but I think they're mostly in Trello. So at least I can go catch up mentally that way. But yeah, so I guess just moving forward, the MSK design would be my focus next week. Well, there was something else I was thinking of. Yeah, there's something for the 220 band that kind of was rolling around in my mind, so I'll bring that up in Slack later. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Let's see. Well, I should defer to Paul. You got anything to share? I've got a couple of slides about our recent adventure. But happy to turn the floor over to you to tell us about everything you got going on.
Okay. Well, the recent adventure is the main thing that's been going on for the last week. We retrieved all the spare equipment that was to have been Remote Lab East, and then it was going to be Remote Lab South, and now it's here at Remote Lab West. Looks like you've got the whole travel log, so I'll let you take it.
Oh no, go ahead. This is the so what we did is we picked up lab equipment that was originally Remote Lab East under Wally Ritchie, and unfortunately he passed away suddenly. So some serious illnesses. So what we did is we reformulated Remote Labs East, which was in Florida, moved it to Little Rock to the volunteers site, and that has not worked out. So what we did is we called it and we went to Little Rock, flew out, and then we drove it back. And we took the so-called southern route. There's a northern route that takes you a little bit further north, but we ended up on the southern route. So this is the route we took back. Took 3 days, and lots of stories there. But all the lab equipment. Here's what Remote Lab West looks like. So this is where it's kind of the business end of a lot of what we do. So plenty of stuff happens in this lab. And this is what Remote Lab South looks like as of today. And what we are talking about doing and soliciting lots of feedback for, so we can make a really good decision, is how to leverage all of this equipment in the best possible way. So we have two big computer cases due to a warranty bonus. When the original, we bought 2 labs worth of equipment. One of the labs, the Remote Lab East, the case was busted. The glass was broken on arrival, and they just sent us a full new case, which was really kind of nice due to a warranty bonus. So we have full guts for one, but it doesn't match Remote Labs West. And then the empty case is gives us a third. And the original one, that's the second one, is still missing some glass doors. That's something we're looking at fixing. So we can fill out this third case with guts and repair the mostly complete one. And then we have 3 pretty powerful computers that can help run a lab. We can use one of these big computers to help fix some performance issues in Remote Lab West. We've been kind of befuddled as to why performance on the virtual machines is not as fast as it should be on a big, powerful machine. So we can use the other one and the equipment, this third one that we haven't filled out yet. It's hypothetical, here's the case. Why don't we go ahead and fill it up like we know how to do? And all the equipment that you saw there in boxes to enable outreach to local universities and companies. So essentially like stand up in a remote lab. That we could either co-locate it there, or we could find another place to have it. So this outreach to like local universities and making a second remote lab site, that's what we wanted to see happen at Remote Lab South. That didn't happen, so we retrieved the gear. So we can continue on with this mission, and that is definitely a win-win. We are talking about putting together like a curriculum and a project proposal or a statement of work for the major local universities here, which is UCSD, SDSU, USD, and San Marcos. Okay, good. We can propose this content, the content that we're working on for Hi4IEF, for the satellite project. Uplink is Opulent Voice, downlink is the work that's already in the repository, getting really close to having a good system here, working system. So we can propose that content that we're working on in a way that looks good for these schools to kind of to the best of our ability to offer to provide gear if needed. Um, and to like here's using open source work in an amateur radio bands, definitely amateur radio centric, in order to provide educational curriculum, hands-on, advanced, innovative, modern, relevant stuff to students and professors. So we get a solid updated statement of work regardless of whether the universities bite on this or not. Now, we've had mixed success in the past with different universities. We've had really good interactions and success with, say, University of Puerto Rico. And we've had lots of good initial reception with universities like Virginia Tech, but they, when it came down to it, our project proposals were never selected by the students. Okay, either way, it's win-win because we get a really good updated statement of work of what we're doing. We are forced to come back, who haven't done this in a couple of years, write everything down again, make it accessible, give a solid on-ramp, revisit all of our assumptions, some things through Opulent Voice, through the work that Matthew has spearheaded. We've changed some of the things that we've assumed. And also things have changed around us. For instance, Petalinux being kind of deprecated a little bit by Xilinx and Yocto layers, kind of like, oh, just deal with the direct Yocto layers. That's the best way. Some of those things, on the back end of getting project work done, those things are not yet reflected in our current documentation in GitHub, for instance. So we get a solid updated statement of work, regardless of whether they bite. And if this doesn't work and we still have a bunch of excess equipment that we may or may not need, then we can follow through in the original decision to just simply liquidate the lab and sell the equipment, sell it off, and put the money back into our operations account, which is yet another win. So we have the equipment in hand. That's what we can do if we don't need it. And I think Paul has some opinions on particular items where we still have actually the top end Regal spectrum analyzer, for instance, I believe, and that there may be some options for the equipment. Over time, we've seen that we rely very heavily, for instance, on the spectrum analyzer, but maybe less heavily on other equipment in the lab. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to Paul to follow up on maybe particular things in the lab, that we've learned through Remote Lab West, and maybe what we might be thinking of in terms of equipment procurement.
Yeah, well, we have gotten a lot of mileage out of the spectrum analyzer, and one big reason for that is that it's very convenient, at least for us here in San Diego. Um, some of these pieces of test equipment are only useful if you have a fixed set of test scenarios, so you can leave them alone, or if you have somebody with hands-on who's able to run ad hoc test scenarios. And that's true of the spectrum analyzer. It's even more true of the oscilloscope, which we've gotten actually very little mileage out of. Um, the power supply we've used for battery testing, but haven't used it for any of our communications missions. Um, the signal generator we've used only for testing frequency error in the reference oscillator, which is useful. I mean, but that's done, I think, for the time being. We've got duplicates of all that stuff now. So, short of outfitting a second lab with hands-on and a volunteer who's engaged in at least one of our ORI projects, then I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do with another set of equipment, except turn it into money or trade it in for better equipment or something like that. The empty computer case is not a huge resource, except physically. It takes up a lot of room. Um, it's not a big money item, and it will take big money to actually fill it up with useful equipment to simulate what we have currently online, and even more if we want to outperform what we have online. So the case is not really a driver in my mind. If if we want to make another computer, fine, we've got another case, but having the case is not a good reason to go make another computer by itself. Um, we got a bunch of stuff that we had here we've duplicated in the equipment we brought home this week that we don't use here either. At least not yet. We've got mini ITX cases, for instance, which are not the cheapest thing in the world. Uh, Rack mount cases intended to hold prototype equipment, which we haven't been able to build yet. Uh, we keep them around for the day when we can build one or sell them and plan on rebuying them. Uh, it's an old design decision that might need revisiting anyway. I don't know that it does, but every design decision that's been sitting on the shelf for that long probably needs revisiting. So those are some of my thoughts about the remote lab equipment. Um, in the meantime, we'll find a place to stash it and possibly find some short-term uses for some of this equipment.
Yeah, well said. I think that sums it up. So we have plenty of decisions to make, and fortunately, we're in a good place in terms of lab equipment. We've got enough enough for our needs. So if anybody's listening to this and has an opinion and sees what we have, then and I'll make sure that our inventory list is in this recording. Please speak up. And if you see an opportunity where we can set up another productive remote lab, if you know of a good partner, then yeah, we're very interested in making that happen. We've seen big success with the Remote Lab West, and a whole lot of the repositories at our GitHub are because we had this equipment, because we were able to deploy and test designs. The equipment itself is only part of the story. The computers that we're talking about, this big computer that hosts lots of VMs, allows us also to use our floating license for Vivado and our MATLAB full license. And both of these licenses are deeply appreciated. MATLAB gets a special call out for giving us really good discounted rate on the full license. So that's kind of how we're able to leverage these things for the community. So yes, it's true that the case itself is really not that big of a deal, but having a full-blown computer with lots of VMs and having the infrastructure that Paul's organized in order to give people accounts and to have full access to things that are not that common. If you're at a big university, you might have access to MATLAB like this. If you're at a company, you may have access to MATLAB and Vivado like this, but it's not that common in out there in open source or hobby realms. And again, if there's replacements for any of this, if open source alternatives are better, then we look at that. Our goal is to give you the best possible tools and also industry standard tools in order to pursue professional development through open source to get you a better job or better educational opportunities. Again, so when we're talking about things commercial, licenses or options. These are because they're considered to be the go-to tools because we're not tool makers. We are interested in making products and the best possible open source products through whatever means necessary. So just wanted to add that note because that comes up. We get questioned about that quite a bit, and we are totally willing to offer any open source alternative or tool chain along the way. Our focus, though, is definitely on the source code produced. Yeah, that sums up a pretty busy week for everybody. Yeah, anything else? I think I know that there's some movement and some updates for the Earth Venus Earth. So we've been asked to take our article from our recent newsletter about the EVE link budget. So there's a article about it in the March newsletter that walks through the link budget, kind of explains it, introduces the different parts, why you care, This is the Earth, Venus, Earth communications attempt for the recent inferior conjunction. We've been asked to prepare that for a report from DSES, the Deep Space Exploration Society. I'm going to go ahead and do that. They wanted it turned into a PDF. So I'm waiting for some updates for some of the parts of that particular link budget. And then we'll go ahead and turn it in. We will have more news on this for the April newsletter. There's at least 2 articles that are in the works. One about delay Doppler channel communications protocol from Pete. And then there's additional, what we learned from the most recent event from Thomas. So he's very interested in giving us some feedback, especially about Doppler spread, which is a sort of a, there's all sorts of Doppler. There's Doppler just from Earth and Venus moving with respect to each other. And so that particular type of Doppler is relatively easy to kind of dial out. You can predict it with math. But there's also an interesting type of Doppler from Venus rotating. So because Venus is rotating on its axis, then it spreads the signal when you use it as a reflector. So if you think of like bouncing a signal off the moon to the Earth, the moon, yes, it wiggles a little bit. It's called libration, but not a lot. So you kind of treat it like a billboard, or you can treat it like a surface. Venus actually, since it rotates kind of slowly. Like a day is like 200 and some odd days on Venus, but it still rotates enough to where it spreads your signal out. And this actually wrecks things. It is a big deal, bigger than you would maybe think, speaking for myself. So Doppler spread, we are now improving our, first order kind of model about Doppler spread for EVE in the link budget. And Thomas has a lot of good things to tell us. And we also, we're seeing some kind of confirmation of maybe some of the things that we're seeing for the Bockham AMSAT DL experiment from 2009. So that news is probably going to be good. When you do a first order kind of analysis of Doppler spread, then you get scary numbers. But those edges of the planet, the limb, so to speak, they don't contribute a whole lot to Doppler spread. It's concentrated more towards the middle of the body. So all of that's being worked on and will be part of our written work. So it's going to come up in the April newsletter, which should come out at the end of April, maybe the start of May. So it's a brief summary. So 2 big areas are, taking what we've learned from this experience and from the literature dating all the way back to the 1960s, and then developing a delay Doppler channel communications protocol. So this is designed specifically to take full advantage of everything that we know about the channel, to move from, just being able to bounce a carrier wave off of Venus, which was done by AMSAT DL, years ago, done recently, Dwingaloo and Stockert achieved the same thing at lower power, which is a big step forward. So now we want to move from just seeing a carrier wave to actual communications, to actual information on that signal. This is a higher bar. It requires more link. So you need a better link budget. You need more. And we're trying to give every advantage through coding and the modulation, the construction of the signal. And there's a lot of really neat stuff here that we've learned. And our commitment is to kind of take what we've learned and see if it works mathematically, and then actually explain it in a way that ordinary people can understand. A lot of things in digital signal processing and engineering and math not explained terribly friendly way. And we are trying very hard to make it as accessible as possible. So those are the things that I know about from the EVE side. All right. Anything else? Let's see. I know one small bit of news from Ribbit, the Ribbit project. So that is it's really neat. Uses polar codes in order to take text SMS, and then so you type it into your app, and then what your phone does, what the application does, is it turns it into audio tones very, uh, you know, very well coded audio tones that then are played out of the speaker of your cell phone, of your mobile device or iPad or whatever. And then you can play those tones over any radio. So it turns any radio into a digital messaging node. And a complaint that we've heard about over the past year off and on was that the user interface had a confusing option. So it says save and exit, and instead of like save and continue. And so people would not like that. They would go, how do I actually, I've typed in my call sign, I've typed in my message, now I want to continue. I want to play the the message. I want to play what it sounds like, the signal. So the save and exit got some feedback, and we've changed that. So now we've changed the user interface. It now looks a lot better. It's save and continue, and it actually goes, and then you can then play. Goes to the next screen. So that was the last kind of like action item that I knew about, and the current maintaining team was on it and got it working. And so what we'll do is we will do another round of publicizing the app. It's a web app, so now it no longer requires you to install it through app stores. The original tech demo is still there, but the improved version is a web app, and people seem to be happy with it. I know that web apps are controversial, but this allows it to operate on a very, very large number of devices, any cell phone, in any iPad. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback over the past couple of months. So we'll do another round of trying to spread the word and make sure that people know about it. And with the slightly better UI, I think that will help. It's generally a good idea to pay attention to complaints when people say that a user interface button or message is confusing. They're probably not the only one. So it's probably a larger number of people that found that to be kind of like didn't look right. When you're designing something, it makes sense to you. But you should always kind of try to be sensitive to these sorts of things from your user base. So hopefully this will clear it out for a lot of other people, and that will lead to even more feedback for other things we can improve. Okay, any other comments or questions before we close for the week? I'd like to thank everybody so much for sharing a bit of your day here. I know that time, once you spend it, you can't get it back, so it's really priceless. It's very, very appreciated. We got a lot of work to do on regulatory, and it's an exciting time, and always never a dull moment for regulatory. And some neat things happening in remote lab. This influx of equipment is going to probably cause several other additional reports and reassessments and a lot of work, and really looking forward to all that Paul can contribute here. And thank you again for being so wonderful about making all of this happen. I don't think a lot of our work simply couldn't be published without you. And thank you very much to Matthew. Opulent Voice is fantastic, and it's the modem module approach has actually hopefully gets some appreciation from the community, showing the value there of modular approach. So lots of good progress. So thank you, everybody. I'll see you on Slack, and we will have a meeting next week, probably back at our usual time on Tuesday. And just thanks, everybody.